Welcome back to Scale Model Workshop in this addition to my original review of the Airfix Spitfire Mark 14. The basic review was done to show the kit as it'd go together right out of the box, with a minimum of cleanup or special adjustment. And outside of first gluing the cockpit sidewalls to the fuselage, my review pretty much followed the instructions. But in this short video, I want to suggest some solutions for a couple of what I consider to be the two significant shortcomings of the kit: the cover over the forward fuel tank, and the gaps at the wing root joint. The first thing I did was assemble the internals of the wing to establish the proper dihedral. I then taped the basic airframe together without the cockpit to see if I could get a handle on what's going on. And since I'd already decided to fit the cockpit later after working out the airframe issues, I tack cemented the fuselage halves together. Looking through the cockpit area, you can see exactly what's going on. The tabs that come off the wing fillet are supposed to fit against the molded rib in the lower wing section, and I'm sure whoever designed this thought themselves quite clever. In theory, the tabs should help center the wing between the fuselage halves, support the wing root, provide fore and aft location because of the fit within the wing box, and as a bonus, provide a mount for the main gear, a forfer. Wow, sounds like a grand idea, and I'm sure it looked perfect in the CAD drawing, but let's get real. You don't need an engineering degree to see everything that's wrong with this idea. In the real world, we're dealing with injection molded soft styrene. It's easily deformed when it's removed from the mold, it's easy to warp, and it's generally flexible. Add into the mix that there's no provision for precisely centering the wing over the exact center of the fuselage, so using the rib for reference is flawed from the start. In all my kits, the tab doesn't even make contact with the rib, and even if it did, the lever action of the design would only result in warping the fillet area, not bringing it against the upper wing half. The fore and aft locations depend on how carefully the modeler assembles the two spars, and the locating devices for these are rudimentary, so it might actually cause interference when aligning the leading edge. All this could have been handled much better with an interlock acting directly at the joint. However, this is what Airfix has provided, and this is what I came up with to work around their design and improve the fit. The first step is to make sure that the wing can actually mate up cleanly at the joint. And in all four of my kits, I found that this area actually had a bit of curve in it, causing the wing to rock around a high point. So after removing the gate material and cleaning up these edges, I marked the extent of the curve and used sandpaper around a dowel to establish a slight corresponding curve in the upper wing half. I then taped the wing in place, and with my finger on the inside of the cockpit, I moved the fillet into contact with the wing and then taped it in place as best I could. After doing this to both sides and checking the center, there was even more space between the tabs and the molded ribs. I glued a piece of styrene over the rib so that it would make contact with the tab. Once that was set, I removed the wing and added an additional piece so that the contact point would be even closer to the edge of the fillet. I also extended it a very slight bit over the original piece to give myself a little extra to adjust for a tight fit. A little back and forth to adjust the additions, and this is the final result. Not only has the joint been improved, but once it's cemented up, it'll be more stable over time. Moving on to the cover over the fuel tank, you can see that Airfix erred in multiple aspects. First, they molded the cover with an incorrect curve. Second, the fit within the cutout's unsatisfactory. And third, Airfix designed the piece to mount flush with the fuselage sides, when in fact it should actually get progressively wider than the surrounding fuselage as it extends towards the base. You can see here that the fuselage sides are straight, so you shouldn't try solving this issue by pinching the fuselage sides together. You'll have to widen the cover, and to ensure that I didn't distort the fuselage sides, I added a piece of sprue. The mating surfaces of the opening in the fuselage were first cleaned up. Here you can see how irregular they were right out of the box. Then I removed this part of the tabs from the cover. To save yourself some work later, don't remove the lower portion on the inside. I thinned out the cover to make it more flexible, and to control the distortion and preserve the material at the edge, I only removed the material from this area. Checking the thickness of the corresponding edges at the mating surface, you can see that the fuselage sides are a bit thicker. I then added a strip of styrene along the base edge of the opening to support the widening of the cover. The inside of the tabs were adjusted until I got the desired overhang. If you accidentally remove these tabs, you can simply add them back with styrene strip. At this point, you need to tighten the gaps, and this will be different in every case depending on how much material was removed from the edges of the opening. But you can do this either by adding some sheet styrene or with a mix of cyanoacrylate and acrylic resin powder. I hope these tips have been helpful, and I'll see you next time to share a simple method for converting this model to an F Mark 14 with a conventional Spitfire hood, and without cannibalizing another kit.